Hey, everyone.
Hey, Peter Parker. You got something for me?
I had to beat an old lady with a stick to get this.
Okay, send out the countdown clock. And here we go.
10, 9, 8,
7, 6,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, and we're live with Secrets to Surviving Alienation. I'm Mr. X. We have Mom here, and we also have a guest speaker, Renji. Hope I'm saying that name right.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks for coming with us today on this journey that none of us expects to be on. Give us a little bit of a sense about what's going on in your world and how you ended up here. Where are you talking to us from?
I'm talking to you from the northeast of UK, United Kingdom. And the sense of where we're coming from, what's actually taking place. I mean, I could only abbreviate what I'm going to do in this meeting with yourselves. Because there's always a starting point. And for me, my starting point would have been the beginning of actually my help, which we were getting from our own local government. So cry for help and you actually get help. But it didn't exactly go in that way. And basically, well, in a nutshell, when things don't go right in the UK, you've got to go through a complaint procedure. So to give you an example of a complaint procedure, my first complaint went in the first 2 weeks of the involvement. And my complaint was that the authority members that were involved weren't taking any concerns of children and from myself and completely alienating us. But before you know it, obviously they're making more and more documentations and they haven't spoken to us. But also a complaint procedure takes time. I mean, from my first stage to the second stage, it took over 2 years. And I'd experienced 13 social workers in that time, 14 managers and 3 directors.
So let's go back. You introduced yourself as coming from the northeast of the United Kingdom. Are you a parent?
Yes, I am.
And are you currently in the process of divorce?
Yeah, I'm separated, divorced.
Is that where the trouble in this conversation originates from? When we talk about surviving alienation, it has to come from someplace. I'm going to assume that you're a dad with kids.
Absolutely. This is exactly the point. And maybe I should have started the date of this whole starting point would have been the 22nd of January 2014, when myself and my ex-partner went on our separate ways. Everything was okay till that point. I was seeing the kids full-time, all the holidays, supporting both sides. They were living between 2 homes. There wasn't an issue. But obviously, when you go your separate ways, some people make life quite difficult. And that was the starting point of the alienation. But alienation, that was taking place a lot earlier, but I didn't know about that until after this point. Before this point, I mean, there was so much going on that I didn't, like I say, I didn't know. It was my children that started disclosing information after they fled their mother's home. So, I mean, it's just a difficult time, because this is the time where you think that both parents should be civilized to support each other, to do the best they can for the children. And I had a perfect example. Before that point, my children were living at my home as well as her home. There was no problems whatsoever. But as soon as this particular date happened, I went my separate ways. It was only 2 weeks later, on the 9th of February 2014, my children fled their mother's home. And that was the first time I actually found out that my children had been subjected to mistreatment in the home by the mother and the mother's family. And like I said, it was on the 9th that they actually fled. I spoke to the mother on the evening. I said, that me and you need to talk for the well-being of the children. The reply I got at the time was that if I didn't bring them back, that she would get me sorted. I didn't know how to tackle this because it was just exploding around me. So the next day I take the children to school, which I was supposed to. When I take them all to school, by 12 o'clock dinner time, I took the last child at a half-day nursery, a 4-year-old. And approximately half an hour, 45 minutes after that, I was on the way to the hospital. I'd been attacked by the ex-partner's new partner. And that was on the 10th. And that was actually the first day that my ex-partner reported domestic violence for the first time in our relationship in 17 years. And I think it was 9 days later that she went and collected some information regards legal aid under domestic violence. But during this time, I was too busy going in and out of hospital, getting my finger repaired, stitched back together.
Sir, I'm gonna ask. Let's go back just so we have a more of a framework, and I don't want to run out of time with you. How old were the children at this point?
My youngest child, he was 4-year-old, and then I had an 8-year-old boy, then a 12-year-old girl, and a 15-year-old boy. But at this point, my youngest child, he was full-time living with me.
Okay. I want to fast forward. You've given us a sense that your situation, like many, went from a reasonable situation to an unreasonable situation in terms of how it impacts the children.
Yes.
You've subsequently become a crusader. And I want to talk to you about the process of going from dad to crusader. People all over the world follow you and your case. You're doing a lot of work to try and help other families and to protect other children. Can you talk about how that happened and what it means to you to be a crusader?
It means a lot, but I think it never ever stopped becoming a dad. I think it comes to a point where you keep hitting obstacles again and again and again, and it seems to never end. But I've always remembered that while I'm continue to speak up for the true counts of my children's suffering, only then my children would be still remain safe. I mean, there's many people who I know in the UK that have been committing suicide, and I totally understand. But I'm urging all these people, you've got to ask yourself that if you're gone, then there's no one left behind to protect your children. And this is something very important.
Would you put yourself in the shoes of people like you when you started this process? What do you wish someone told you when this first started to happen?
I'm not really sure how to answer that because at the beginning, all I needed was for somebody to get involved and to take a crime, to be able to report a crime. I never thought, I mean, now looking back at it, I wish somebody told me that nobody would want to know, because when you speak about crimes and then it links with government bodies, you just can't, you just neglect it.
Would you have a piece of advice that you can share with the audience that you wish someone had told you at any point in this process? What is the most important thing you've learned that you need to share with people now?
To remain strong, to be strong, and to try to get some help. Don't be alone. You can't alienate yourself. You need other professionals involved. I think a lot of difficulty start piling on is when you're alienated, you're just on your own. You just don't know which way to go because there's no support. And then you're suffering at the same time, and then it just starts piling on with the pressure, and you just don't know where to start and where to finish. So you need somebody independent to be involved in some form of a way, because it's a difficult time when you're actually going through this with your children. You know they're getting alienated, you know they're getting mistreated, but you just don't know what to do. But you could be irrational then, and then you get upset and you get frustrated, which is a normal behavior of humans. I mean, every parent's like that. But then people start saying that frustration is aggressive. It's just, the words are just changed. So somebody does a crime to your child, you speak up, you get upset about it, then you get told that you shouldn't get upset about it because it's not appropriate. Well, what is appropriate? So for people, I think people need to support each other and take note of alienation, because this is a very serious crime and the impact it has on my own children. And they're still paying the price for it today because of the neglect.
We're devastated to hear this. This is a devastating reality for millions of families around the world. You've chosen to protect your children. Would you talk about when it seemed like there was nothing else you could do, you didn't know what to do? How did you come to take action, and what action did you take?
Well, this was approximately 4 months ago, where I exhausted all the remits. Many professionals, MPs, mayors, councillors, chief commissioner of police, chief executive of the district, Middlesbrough. And everybody's telling me that this is illegal, what's going on, but then I'm getting passed about. So I've probably gone through maybe 140 different professionals, as well as the normal 999 calls and Childline and NSPCC.
Can you describe what some of those professionals do? What are their titles, and what service do they perform, or what are they attempting to perform?
You see, it's like the chief executive of Middlesbrough Borough Council. He's responsible for everything in the council, what's supposed to take place. Now, people are doing crimes. Now, coincidentally, this gets a lot more complicated, but I'm actually in the middle of making a recording to explain this very thing. But these are people of position who are supposed to help run our government in our district and bring concerns forward to deal with these matters, just so we could improve things. But fortunately, that's not been happening. It's what is a normal that actually happens. Everybody who I speak to, the chances are they'll be sent on the sick, or they'll go on the sick, especially once I've showed them some information that I have. And this is a very frustrating time because I'm trying to report crimes on children, which is neglected. So and then 4 months ago, it just come to a point that there's nobody coming. There's no help. Doesn't matter what I've done to all my friends, family, associates, telling about it, showing them it. They see it. They tell me the very same thing, like MPs and police officers. But no, it's not moving forward. So approximately 4 months ago, I made a recording for the first time, and I just released it on YouTube because I was breaking silence. But there's no right way of breaking silence. There's no manual on breaking silence. So the first recording was very simple. Who it involved, which was Middlesbrough Social Services. It was taking place where I am, which was child cruelty in broad daylight. I was giving the information about the court case that's a fraud. And I was waiting to get some feedback to think, hopefully somebody will understand what I've just said. And I'm making this serious claim. And a month and a half passed, no sign. So I made another one. And in this one, I actually share some live evidence of a document that our government have failed in their duties to not even investigate these crimes deliberately as well. And when I gave that out, what I was getting more calls of victims that are struggling and suffering throughout the northeast of England and the UK more than support. So then I ended up starting to support more and had to hold back a little bit. But I did get a lot of calls from police departments where they were asking me questions and they were seeing the information and they're actually following this whole thing, but they can't do nothing about it. It's like our MPs, you tell them the very same thing. They just move forward. Now, in the record that we released,
and I know the details are very important to you in this case, but we have a very limited amount of time to share the things that you think are most important that people know that they can do. We're trying to give people very actionable strategies to survive this. You had 13 social workers in 2 years.
Yes.
How do you survive getting passed around? You and your family, your children, had a revolving door of professionals. How do you help your children survive this? What did you do? What can you do? What can anyone do?
The only thing I could have done, which I did do, was for my children, was telling them that, don't worry, somebody will come. Because that's the only thing, the right thing I could do is by letting them know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, even though I couldn't see one myself, and I'm still going through it. It is very difficult when you're in a revolving door. It gets very frustrated, and when it goes on for so many years, the amount of neglect that takes place, that's where the troubles cause for the children, because they having the repercussions of this now.
Okay, I have a question from a commenter, Steven. He wanted to know if the children were ever used to get money from you, like child support or something like that, while being alienated.
Well, for me, my wife was living separately to myself before we separated, but I was still supporting both homes. I didn't see no problems with that. But since 2014, when we parted our ways and the children fled her home, I've had no issues with that. All ties have just been cut from me and my children, and nobody's even questioned that to us in the last 6 years. So I don't pay nothing because I have all the children, the 3 of the children, you see. And she has 1 child. I've got 3 children, and we can't even see that little child today. None of us can. And that's only because she moves city to city. But there's nothing money-wise that anybody in the UK has questioned me for the last, well, now 7 years coming to now. Not once. And that's because of the revolving door. They kept passing us on, and they just didn't know what was in the left hand and what was in the right. So, and even now they still don't know, and this is the complications that we have. I hope that answers the question.
Definitely does. When you say the mother is moving around, she moves around from home to home. How often does she do that?
You see, what actually happened, she actually moved away the first time with 2 of the children. I had 2 of the children. This was in 2017 in January. And then it took me till October 2018 to find out where she was, to try to arrange some contact. And that she moved to another country. We would say she moved to Scotland. So in October, I got some solicitors involved, asked for contact. Well, she didn't give me contact. What she did is she handed me the older one over. So when I got the older one back, I got him back on Boxing Day 2018. Then I went back to get access to the younger one for me and the 3 children that I got. Well, from that point, she moved in Scotland twice, excuse me, that I know about. And now she's left Scotland because the solicitors can't find her in Scotland. Once it goes into court, she moves the city. So now she's moved in the south of UK, which now obviously I'm trying to get some sort of support in the UK now because it's a different law.
Rangi, can I interrupt you and ask the question?
Yeah, of course.
When we're dealing with a situation, every situation is unique.
Yeah.
But there are patterns that are similar. What advice do you have for someone in your situation where the ex keeps moving and evading the process? It sounds like that's what you're describing. Or maybe there's a reason for it. I won't judge. But when someone is in a situation like what you're experiencing, what advice do you have? What strategy can you share will help in a situation like yours?
Well, obviously, the mother doesn't want to compromise in any way. She's set in her ways. She has no reason to stop the contact with any of the children or myself. And the only way in my situation would be to get back into the courts, because for her, she's blaming everything on the judges. You see, because of what historically took place through the revolving doors of our government body, social services, she's now using that against the judges and obviously the children and myself. So the only way out of it is then to get it back into court. And that's a headache, because first you've got to find the person. And I've been now since 2019, it's 2 years. 3 years altogether, I've not been able to see my youngest son. That's 3 years for the older 2 children to not to see their youngest brother. And 2 years for the other one that's been here, he's not been able to. We could only keep moving forward. But the system must change, because the system actually allows alienation, time for alienation to take place. It actually allows that, because when they don't pay attention, they don't know what's going on through the revolving doors with misinformation, then it affects the long term. But like the mother's moving at the moment, the only thing the advice can be is just to keep moving forward, to try to trace her. The children try to find out where she is. The children try to communicate with the mother, but it's only when she wants to communicate. So it gets difficult for them also.
Thank you so much for your courageousness and for taking time to come and share. I'm going to give you the last word. Is there anything that you can share with people like you who are in a similar situation all over the world? What is the one most important thing that you have to share with this audience of people just like you?
Never give up. Just never give up. Move forward. Because what's behind us is what's taken place, and what's in front of us is the only thing we could stop. Is to move forward and to hopefully make a better place, to make that change. But collectively, we can't do it on our own. So just keep getting back up. And always remember one thing. Anything happens to you, your children then don't have nobody that will love them like any parent, regardless of a male or female. We all love our children. And to try to not to cause as problems in the relationships.
What's the one resource you found online that helped you the most that you want to make sure everybody knows about?
For me, one of the best things that actually was for me was online was an agency called Changing Futures, which were very, very supportive in the whole family matter. Understanding, having somebody who understands what you're going through is half of the journey. So hope that answers the question. I mean, that is having a family unit agency to get some support. But I mean, that was, like I say, a long time ago since I've broken silence. Is communicating with the likes of yourself, Mom. That we need to make that change. We need to get the public together to support each other, because it's something that no parent should face alone.
Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us and your thoughts. This has been Secrets to Surviving Alienation, and I appreciate everybody coming on and talking, and hopefully we all can get through this and make some changes to better all of our lives. You guys have a good night, and thanks again.
My greatest moments didn't come from my greatest moments. My greatest moments came from my greatest defeat.